Anger boils over. On Thanksgiving Day, my daughter-in-law shouted, "Apologize to my mother or get out." She looked at me with confidence that I would crawl back with apologies. I got up, walked over, and whispered just 2 words in her ear. In an instant, their perfect life was shattered. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. I stood in the doorway of my own dining room, watching strangers occupy my home. The table was set with fine china, Margaret's collection, the Wedgwood pattern she'd inherited from her grandmother, but nobody had asked me about the menu, the guest list, or even where I should sit. My daughter Laura presided at the head of the table, the position I'd held for 30 years, laughing too loudly at something her husband Woodrow said. Rebecca, Woodrow's mother, surveyed the room like a queen inspecting her newly conquered territory. They didn't hear me approach, too busy with their performance. "Rebecca, you've outdone yourself with the turkey," Woodrow said, carving another slice. "Perfectly seasoned." Rebecca smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Well, someone needed to take charge. You know how men are in the kitchen, helpless." She glanced at me then, just briefly to make sure I'd heard. I had. I pulled out the only empty chair, the one closest to the kitchen door. Not my usual seat. That spot had been claimed by a floral centerpiece tall enough to block my view of half the table. Laura poured wine into crystal glasses, playing hostess in my house. She moved with practiced grace, offering seconds, refilling water, never once asking if I needed anything. The performance was flawless. I cut my turkey slowly, methodically, watching faces instead of my plate. Old sheriff habits. "This stuffing is divine," Laura said. "Where did you find the recipe, Mom?" Mom, she'd started calling Rebecca that 6 months ago. I took another bite, chewed carefully, said nothing. Rebecca reached across me without asking permission, moving my water glass to make room for her wine. "Oh, just something I threw together. Your father never appreciated good cooking anyway." She spoke about me in third person, as if I'd left the room. Woodrow chuckled. "Lucky for him, you ladies took over." The conversation flowed around me like I was furniture. They discussed holiday shopping plans, complaints about traffic, a new restaurant downtown. Normal family talk, except I wasn't included in a single exchange. I was a witness to my own irrelevance. Then Rebecca shifted topics. "I was remembering Margaret the other day. Such a lovely woman." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. Margaret had been gone 3 years. Rebecca barely knew her. "She once told me she dreamed of traveling," Rebecca continued, her voice taking on a wistful tone. "Seeing the world. But of course, that never happened." I set my fork down with deliberate care. "We took 3 trips to Europe. She chose every destination." Rebecca's smile didn't waver. "Oh, she told me a very different story. Said she felt constrained." She let the word hang in the air, poisonous. Laura leaned forward, engaged now. "Really? Dad never mentioned that." "Your father had his own priorities," Rebecca said. "Law enforcement takes a certain type of person, someone who needs control." She rearranged the salt and pepper shakers, moving them away from me, closer to her plate. Another small assertion of dominance. Woodrow nodded like he understood something profound. "That must have been hard on a marriage." "It was," Rebecca said softly, as if sharing a confidence. She confided in me several times, about feeling trapped, about wondering what her life might have been if she'd made different choices. The lies were beautifully constructed. Just enough truth. Margaret did confide in friends. She did have dreams, twisted into weapons. I looked at Laura, waiting to see if she'd defend her mother's memory. She didn't. She just looked at me with something like pity. I picked up my water glass, took a long drink, watched Rebecca over the rim. She was enjoying this. The power of rewriting history, of controlling the narrative, in my own house. "Your wife was a saint to put up with you as long as she did," Rebecca said, her voice honey-sweet. "All those years of your rigid schedules, your demands, your need to be right about everything." "Mom has a point," Laura said quietly. "You were pretty strict when I was growing up." Strict. The word they used for boundaries, for structure, for giving a damn. I'd worked double shifts to keep Laura in private school, coached her soccer team, taught her to drive, walked her down the aisle. Stupid me. Rebecca was warming up now, emboldened by Laura's support. "Honestly, Alonzo, you were a pathetic man then, and nothing's changed. At least Margaret doesn't have to endure you anymore." The table went silent. Even Woodrow stopped chewing. Laura's eyes went wide, but not with disapproval, with anticipation, waiting to see what I'd do. I picked up my napkin, dabbed my mouth, folded it precisely beside my plate. Then I looked directly at Rebecca. At least I was honest with her, every single day, until the end. Not everyone can say the same about their marriages. The color drained from Rebecca's face in a visible wave. Her hands, resting on the table, went completely still. Laura's chair scraped back violently. "How dare you speak to her that way, in front of all of us?" Woodrow found his voice. "You owe Rebecca an apology. Right now." I didn't move, just looked at him, then back at Rebecca. Her eyes had gone wide, her breathing shallow. She knew. The question was whether she understood how much I knew. "Did you hear me?" Laura's voice was shaking now, climbing in pitch. "You will apologize." I picked up my fork again, cut another piece of turkey. The small action seemed to enrage her more than anything I could have said. "This is unacceptable." Laura was fully standing now, fists clenched at her sides. "You insult her, in your own home, after everything we've done for you." Everything they'd done. Living rent-free for 2 years, using my credit cards, driving my cars, taking over my house room by room until I barely recognized it. Yes, I was drowning in gratitude. "Answer me," Laura shouted. "Apologize to my mother, or there will be consequences. Do you understand me?" I looked at her, really looked at her. My daughter. The little girl I'd pushed on swings and read bedtime stories to. The young woman I'd supported through college, through her wedding, through every bad decision she'd made with this weak man she'd married. When had she become this person? Or had she always been this way, and I just refused to see it? I looked at Woodrow, slouched in his chair, feeding off my money and my space like a parasite. At Rebecca, still pale, still frozen. At Laura, trembling with righteous fury, she had no right to feel. Something shifted inside me. A door closing, a switch flipping. I'd been their victim, their resource, their fool. Not anymore. Laura's voice rose higher. "You will apologize or get out of this house." I set down my fork with deliberate care. The soft click against the plate was louder than her shouting. The silence after Laura's threat lasted 3 heartbeats. Then she found her voice again, louder this time, more desperate. The kind of volume that came from realizing you might be losing control. "Did you hear me?" Her hands were shaking. "Apologize to my mother right now, or get out." Woodrow shifted forward in his seat, ready to support whatever came next. "Laura's right. This has gone too far." Rebecca sat frozen, her earlier confidence gone, replaced by something that looked like fear. She was staring at me, barely blinking, as if I might vanish if she looked away. I pushed my chair back slowly. The legs scraped against the hardwood floor, Margaret's floor, the one we'd refinished together the summer before she got sick. I stood with the same controlled movement I'd used during tense situations as a sheriff, when staying calm meant staying alive. "Finally," Laura said, her voice cracking with relief. "Good. Now apologize and we can move past this." Woodrow leaned back, satisfied. "About time you came to your senses." I didn't walk toward the door. I walked around the table, each step measured and unhurried. Laura's expression shifted from triumph to confusion. Rebecca's eyes tracked my movement, growing wider with each step I took. "Well," Laura's voice had lost its certainty. "What are you doing?" I stopped behind Rebecca's chair, placed one hand on the back of it, not threatening, just steady. She tried to lean away but had nowhere to go. I bent down until my mouth was level with her ear. The room went silent, everyone straining to hear. I spoke 2 words, just 2, barely above a whisper. "I know." Rebecca's face drained of color completely. Not pale, gray. Her hands started trembling so violently, she had to grip the edge of the table to hide it. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I straightened up, let my hand fall from the chair, and walked past Laura without looking at her. The side table by the entrance hall held my keys. I picked them up, the metal cool against my palm. "Mom?" Laura's voice behind me, confused now. "What did he say? What's wrong?" Rebecca's reply was barely audible. "Nothing, Nothing." "Rebecca?" Woodrow sounded genuinely concerned. "You look like you're going to be sick. Where are you going? Laura called after me. "We're not finished." I opened the front door. Cold November air rushed in, carrying the smell of dying leaves. "Don't you walk away from me!" Laura's voice climbed to a shriek. "Come back here!" I stepped outside. The porch boards creaked under my weight, familiar and solid, real, unlike everything that had just happened inside. "Fine," Laura screamed from the doorway. "Don't come back. We don't need you." I closed the door quietly behind me, more devastating than any slam. The drive downtown took 20 minutes. Traffic was light. Most people were home with family, digesting their Thanksgiving meals, watching football, being normal. I wasn't normal anymore. Maybe I never had been. And it had just taken this long to admit it. I parked in the underground garage beneath a modest building on Travis Street, took the elevator to the 3rd floor, apartment 3C, the place I'd rented 4 months after Margaret died, when the silence in the house became unbearable. Laura didn't know about it. Nobody did. I'd needed somewhere that was just mine, where no memories waited around every corner. The apartment was sparse: a couch, a desk, a bed in the single bedroom, no photographs, no personal items, just a space to think. I'd been coming here once or twice a week, usually late at night, sitting in the dark and remembering who I used to be before grief made me weak. Tonight I turned on the desk lamp and opened the bottom drawer. The manila folder was exactly where I'd left it a week ago, when the private investigator had delivered it personally rather than trusting it to email. Rebecca Lynn Thornton, the label read. I spread the contents across the desk surface, arranging them in chronological order, old habit from case files. The investigator had been thorough. Every detail matched. Roger Thornton, declared dead in a boating accident in 2009, alive and living in Albuquerque under the name Richard Thompson. The death certificate, filed in Harris County. The life insurance payout, $200,000, paid to the grieving widow 6 months later. The photographs, Roger, now Richard, outside a landscaping business he owned, looking healthy and tan and very much not dead. Bank statements showed the insurance money deposited into Rebecca's account in January 2010. By March, she'd bought a small house in Pearland. By June, she'd helped Woodrow start his first failed business venture. The money had trickled away over 15 years, but the crime remained. Insurance fraud, conspiracy, filing a false death certificate, each one a felony. I pulled out my legal pad and started making notes. The investigator's report included witness statements. Neighbors in Albuquerque who knew Richard Thompson, who'd mentioned his past in Texas, who'd seen him with a woman matching Rebecca's description on 2 separate occasions over the years. They'd been careful, but not careful enough. My laptop hummed to life. I pulled up the insurance company's website, found their fraud hotline, wrote down the number. Then I searched for federal statutes on insurance fraud. Penalties ranged from 5 to 20 years, depending on the amount. 200,000 put it firmly in federal territory. I leaned back in the chair, studied the evidence laid out before me. In my 35 years as a sheriff, I'd seen plenty of criminals. The violent ones, the desperate ones, the stupid ones who got caught immediately. But the ones like Rebecca were different. The planners. The ones who thought they were smarter than everyone else, who believed they could get away with it forever because they'd gotten away with it so far. She'd played the grieving widow perfectly, collected sympathy along with the money, built a new life on that foundation of lies. And when Woodrow married Laura, she'd seen another opportunity. A successful man with property and savings, a daughter who was easily manipulated, a target who'd been softened by grief. They'd moved in temporarily 26 months ago. Temporary had become permanent, room by room, decision by decision. Rebecca had orchestrated it beautifully, always with Laura as the intermediary. "Dad, we just need a few months to get back on our feet. Dad, Woodrow's business is about to turn around. Dad, you have so much space and we're family." Family, the word they used to justify everything. I picked up one of the photographs, Roger Richard, standing beside a truck with Thompson Landscaping painted on the side. He looked happy. Probably happier than he'd been married to Rebecca. I didn't blame him for faking his death. I understood the impulse to disappear, to start over, to escape a life that had become unbearable. But he'd committed a crime. They both had. And I'd spent my entire career believing that crimes had consequences, that justice mattered, that people who broke the law should face the penalty. I'd spent Thanksgiving being insulted in my own home by a woman who was a criminal, who'd stolen $200,000, who'd built her entire current existence on fraud, and my daughter had defended her, called her mom, ordered me to apologize to her. The anger I'd suppressed during dinner rose up now, hot and clean and clarifying. But I pushed it back down. Anger made mistakes. Anger was impulsive. I needed to be cold, methodical, strategic. I opened a fresh document on my laptop and started typing. First, a timeline of events. Second, a list of evidence. Third, potential legal strategies. I worked until past midnight, building my case piece by piece, the way I'd built hundreds of cases before. When I finally closed the folder, my hands were steady and my mind was clear. I knew exactly what I was going to do. Not revenge, that was messy and emotional. Justice, clean and procedural and absolutely deserved. The folder stayed closed on my desk for 2 days. Not because I had doubts, I'd stopped doubting the moment I walked out of that house, but because I needed to plan every step carefully. 35 years as a sheriff had taught me that emotion made mistakes, and I couldn't afford mistakes. By the third morning, my phone had 17 missed calls from Laura. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I opened the folder on day 3 and began building my case the way I'd built hundreds before, methodically, comprehensively, leaving no gaps for defense attorneys or doubt. The evidence against Rebecca was solid, but it was only part of the story. I needed to document everything, the full picture of exploitation, manipulation, and fraud that had consumed the last 2 years of my life. I drove to my bank downtown on a gray December morning. The officer who helped me looked uncertain when I requested 5 years of statements. "That's quite a request," she said. 5 full years of statements? Every transaction, every month. I'll wait." She hesitated. "May I ask what this is for?" "Legal documentation." The printer hummed for 20 minutes, spitting out page after page of transactions. I watched them stack up, 5 years of financial proof. Each page represented money I'd spent supporting 3 adults who'd promised to contribute but never did. Mortgage payments they should have helped with, utilities, property taxes, car repairs, medical bills, groceries for 3 people who weren't me. Back at my apartment, I entered every transaction into a spreadsheet. Yellow highlighting for mortgage payments, blue for utilities, green for groceries, red for credit card charges they'd made on my accounts. By the time I finished, the total glowed at the bottom of the screen. $340,000. $340,000 over 5 years. I stared at that number until it stopped feeling like money and started feeling like evidence. The next day, I drove to the law office of Leonard Martinez in downtown Houston's business district. The firm occupied the 10th floor of a glass tower, all clean lines and expensive furniture. Leonard was a family law specialist someone had recommended years ago when Margaret was sick and we were updating our wills. I'd liked his no-nonsense approach then. I needed it even more now. He listened without interrupting while I explained the situation. Then I slid the folders across his conference table. The spreadsheets, the bank statements, the property documents showing the house was solely in my name. Leonard flipped through the pages, occasionally glancing up with raised eyebrows. "You've been supporting 3 adults for over 2 years?" "Yes." "Did they contribute anything? Any written agreement?" "Promises, nothing in writing, nothing showing up in bank accounts." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Then legally, this is straightforward. They're guests who've overstayed. In Texas, you need to give family members 30 days written notice if there's no lease agreement. After that, if they refuse to leave, we file for formal eviction." "How long does the full process take?" "If they fight it, could be 2 months, but most people leave when they realize they have no legal standing." He paused. "Are you sure about this? It's your daughter we're talking about." "I'm sure." That afternoon, I met Ashley Morgan at the same diner where we used to grab coffee during shift changes, back when we both wore badges. She'd left the sheriff's department 5 years ago to start her own private investigation firm. I'd followed her career from a distance, proud to see her succeed. She slid into the booth across from me, looking older but still sharp. "Alonzo, it's been too long. I need your help." I pushed the Rebecca folder across the table. She opened it, studied the photographs of Roger Thornton alive and well in Albuquerque, looked up, whistled quietly. "I remember when he died. Rebecca played the grieving widow perfectly. She's still playing it. Collected $200,000 in insurance money. Ashley's eyes narrowed. And you want confirmation he's alive? I want proof that would convince a jury. Photographs, current address, employment records, witness statements. Everything that can stand up in court. When do you need this? Before January. She closed the folder, met my eyes. Consider it done. Roger Thornton's about to become very thoroughly documented. The days until Christmas moved with strange speed. Laura's calls continued. 17 became 32, then 45. Her voicemails evolved from angry to confused to worried. I read every message but responded to none. The silence became its own form of power, and I watched her spiral through my phone screen without lifting a finger to stop it. A week before Christmas, she found me. I never figured out how. Maybe she'd hired someone, or maybe she'd just driven around likely neighborhoods until she spotted my car. Either way, there she was at my apartment door on a Tuesday evening, eyes red from crying. "Dad, please." Her voice cracked. "It's almost Christmas. We miss you. I'm sorry about Thanksgiving." I stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, blocking entry. "Are you sorry, or is Rebecca worried?" "What? No, we just want to fix this. You need to find your own place to live." Her face went blank, like her brain couldn't process the words. "What are you talking about? That's our home." "No, it's my home, and you're leaving. You can't be serious." I closed the door while she was still forming her next sentence. Heard her voice through the wood, calling my name, pleading. I walked to my desk where Ashley's preliminary report waited and didn't look back. 2 days later, she stopped calling. Ashley called me on a Tuesday morning, 2 days before Christmas. Her voice carried that careful, neutral tone investigators use when they've found something significant. I set down my coffee, pulled out my notepad, and listened to her confirm what I'd suspected but needed to prove. Roger Thornton was alive, well, and living under the name Richard Thompson in a suburb of Albuquerque. She'd photographed him shopping for groceries, walking his dog, collecting mail. 37 clear images of a dead man living. "I watched him for 3 days," Ashley said. "He has a routine, works 9 to 5 at AutoNation, lives in a small house on Maple Street, goes by Richard Thompson exclusively." "Anyone who knew him before?" "Spoke to a neighbor, carefully. Says Richard moved there in 2010, keeps to himself, never mentions a past life." She paused. 15 years of hiding. Rebecca did her homework, but she didn't count on me. No one ever does. She delivered the complete report to my apartment that afternoon. I spread the photographs across my kitchen table. Roger loading groceries into a Toyota. Roger walking a golden retriever. Roger checking his mailbox with R. Thompson, clearly visible. Employment records from AutoNation, showing Richard Thompson hired in 2011. Witness statements from 3 neighbors. A paper trail documenting the legal name change filed in New Mexico courts in 2010, 1 year after his supposed death. I picked up each image, studied it, set it down in an organized row. My face showed no satisfaction, just confirmation. This was the final piece. The next morning, I drove to a notary public downtown, watched her stamp each document, the rhythmic thunk of the seal, the careful signature, the embossed impression that made everything official. I had multiple certified copies made of everything. Ashley's investigation, bank statements, property deeds, financial spreadsheets. Created 3 complete evidence packets, one for myself, one for Leonard Martinez, one for potential court proceedings. Everything dated, signed, stamped, legally binding. From there, I went to Leonard's office to review the final documents. He'd prepared 3 separate notices, one for Laura, one for Woodrow, one for Rebecca. The 30-day notice to vacate. The language was cold, legal, precise. "This is ironclad," Leonard said. "They have no legal standing to remain." I read every word, ran my finger down the page, paused at the deadline date. 30 days from delivery? Correct, January 15th. After that, we file for formal eviction if they haven't left voluntarily. They won't leave willingly. Then we'll use the sheriff's department for enforcement. Ironic, considering your background. He slid the documents toward me. "Once you deliver these, there's no taking it back." I signed my name at the bottom of each notice with deliberate strokes. I don't want to take it back. I drove to Bel Air on December 26th, day after Christmas. Leonard followed in his own car, a witness, a legal presence, a signal that this was official business. My key turned in my own front door for the first time since Thanksgiving. The sound made everyone inside freeze. They were in the living room, all three of them. Laura looked up from her phone, surprise flashing across her face. Woodrow stood from the couch. Rebecca went pale. "Dad, thank goodness we need to—" I cut Laura off. "This is a legal notice. Read it." Move forward, documents in hand. Extended my arm to Laura first. She took the paper automatically, confusion replacing her relief. Then Woodrow's notice, then Rebecca's. Each delivery was formal, silent. I didn't throw them down, didn't slam anything. Just placed them in their hands and waited. Woodrow scanned his copy. "You can't evict us. We've lived here for years. Which is why you're getting 30 days instead of immediate removal." Laura's hands were shaking. "Immediate removal? This is insane." Woodrow stood, moved toward me. Tried to make himself bigger, more threatening. "You think you can just throw us out? I'll fight this. I'll take you to court. You're welcome to try. You'll lose." He stepped closer. "Maybe I won't leave. What then?" I didn't step back, didn't move at all, just held his gaze, relaxed but ready. 35 years of handling volatile situations in my bones. "Then you'll be trespassing. Texas Penal Code 3005. Class B misdemeanor, up to 6 months in jail. Want to test it?" Woodrow stopped 3 feet away, suddenly uncertain. His bluster drained visibly. "I spent 35 years enforcing the law," I said quietly. "Try me." Laura dropped to her knees, actually fell to her knees on the floor, tears streaming. "Please, Dad, I'm your daughter. Remember when I was little? Remember how happy we were?" I watched her without expression, hands clasped behind my back. Waited. "You can't do this to us. Where will we go?" "That's not my concern anymore." "How can you be so cruel?" "You made your choices at Thanksgiving. You chose her over me." I glanced at Rebecca, still frozen with her notice. "Now live with it." Rebecca's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Alonzo, please." I looked directly at her. "Read the notice, Rebecca. Every word." We can talk about—" "There's nothing to talk about. You have 30 days. Her hands shook so badly she couldn't hold the paper steady. Laura and Woodrow didn't notice. They were too busy cycling through their own panic. "What if we refuse to leave?" Laura demanded. "January 16th, the sheriff's department will remove you and your belongings. Your choice is whether you leave with dignity or in handcuffs." Leonard spoke for the first time, his voice carrying professional authority. "I'd advise cooperation. Your legal position is non-existent." I looked at each of them in turn. January 15th, not a day later. Walked to the door. Leonard followed. Behind us, Laura started shouting again, but the words were just noise now. Desperation without power. Outside, Leonard paused by his car. "They'll fight this. Let them try." I drove back to my apartment, and for the first time since Thanksgiving, I slept through the entire night. The certified letter arrived at my apartment 3 days after New Year's. I recognized the law firm's name embossed on the envelope, Morrison and Associates, one of those mid-tier firms that specialized in making noise rather than winning cases. I opened it, standing at my kitchen counter, reading the threatening language about oral agreements and familial obligations and wrongful eviction. Laura and Woodrow had hired themselves an attorney. I smiled for the first time in weeks, set the letter down, and called Leonard. "They took the bait," I said when he answered. "Let me guess, threats about lawsuits and emotional distress?" Almost word for word. I drove to Leonard's office that afternoon. He read the letter twice, then leaned back in his chair with the kind of expression lawyers get when opposing counsel makes their job easier. "Standard desperation tactic," he said. "They're threatening to sue you for wrongful eviction. Can they win? No. They have no documentation, no witnesses to any agreement, and you own the property outright. This is posturing." He tapped the letter with his pen. "How long will it take to shut them down?" "I'll have a response drafted by tomorrow. They'll realize they're wasting their money." He pulled out a legal pad, started making notes. "Morrison is decent enough, but he's got nothing to work with. He knows it too. This letter is theater. Don't pull any punches." Leonard looked up, smiled slightly. "I never do. 2 days later, I sat across from Leonard while he read his response letter aloud. The language was surgical, cutting through Morrison's bluster with facts and case law. Your client's claim of an oral agreement is legally insufficient in Texas property law. Mr. Peterson, as sole owner of the property with clear title, has absolute right to determine occupancy. Furthermore, your threat of an elderly abuse claim is without merit. Your clients are adults in their 30s who have lived rent-free for 5 years, while Mr. Peterson expended over $300,000 supporting them. That should get their attention, I said. If they push forward, they'll just rack up legal fees they can't afford. Leonard signed the letter with a flourish. But they will push forward. People like this always do. He was right. January 15th came and went. I drove past the Bel Air house mid-morning, slow roll, not stopping, and saw Laura's car in the driveway. Lights on inside, no moving trucks, no boxes visible through the windows. They'd chosen defiance. I pulled into a parking lot a block away and texted Leonard, "Still occupied, file tomorrow." The next morning, Leonard and I met at the Harris County Courthouse. We walked up the steps together, through security, to the clerk's office. The eviction filing packet was thick with documentation, everything we'd gathered over the past month. Leonard slid it across the counter to the clerk, who flipped through with practiced efficiency. "Thorough," she commented, stamping each page with rhythmic precision. She handed back the receipt. I folded it carefully into my jacket pocket. 3 weeks until the hearing, Leonard said as we walked back to our cars. They'll get the summons in a few days. Then reality sets in. It set in faster than I expected. My phone rang that evening while I sat in my reading chair at the apartment. Woodrow's name on the screen. I answered, put it on speaker, set the phone on the side table, leaned back and listened. "You want to play hardball?" Woodrow's voice came through loud, angry, desperate. "Fine. I'll tell everyone what kind of man you really are. Every neighbor, every friend, everyone who thought you were such a great sheriff, they'll know you threw your own family onto the street." I said nothing. Let him burn through his fury. "Your reputation will be destroyed. You'll be the man who abandoned his daughter. Are you listening to me? Are you done?" Silence. Then, What?" I picked up the phone, spoke directly and quietly. "When the judge hears the recording of this conversation alongside evidence that you've contributed nothing while living in my house for 5 years, it will make my case even stronger. Thank you." I ended the call. Set the phone back down. Imagine Woodrow's face as he realized what he'd just done. How Rebecca had pushed him into making another mistake, convinced him that aggression would work when it only made things worse. She was scared. That's what this was. Rebecca, terrified of what I knew, manipulating Woodrow into escalation because she needed leverage. She still believed she could create chaos, make me negotiate, force me to back down to avoid exposure. She'd never been more wrong. A week later, Leonard called with an update. They filed a response. Morrison is arguing emotional hardship and good faith residency. Will it work? Not in Texas. Property rights are sacred here. Judge will side with the owner, especially with your documentation. I heard papers rustling. Hearing is scheduled for February 14th, mid-morning. When do we start preparing? Already started. I need you to gather any additional evidence. Neighbor statements if you can get them. Photographs of the property showing your possessions versus theirs. Anything that establishes this was always your home, not a shared residence. That night, I spread documents across my apartment table. Bank statements arranged chronologically, property deeds, tax records. The recorded phone call backed up on 3 devices. Photographs of every room in my house, taken the day after I delivered the eviction notices, showing Margaret's furniture, my books, my life occupying every space while Laura and Woodrow's belongings looked temporary, superficial, like guests who'd overstayed. Leonard's words echoed, "Start preparing your evidence." I'd been preparing evidence my entire career. This was just another case, another investigation, another pursuit of justice. Except this time, I was both the investigator and the victim. And the defendants were family. But they'd stopped being family at Thanksgiving. The moment Laura chose Rebecca over me, the moment she called that woman Mom, the moment they all sat in judgment of my life and my marriage and decided I deserved their contempt, that's when the bonds broke. What remained was just law, property rights, evidence, justice. I could work with that. The courtroom smelled like old wood and anxious people. I'd been in hundreds of courtrooms during my career, testifying as an arresting officer, providing evidence, watching justice work its slow machinery. But I'd never sat at the plaintiff's table before. Leonard adjusted his briefcase beside me, organized and confident. Across the aisle, Laura and Woodrow sat with their attorney, a nervous-looking man named Morrison who kept shuffling papers. Rebecca sat in the gallery behind them, pale and rigid. The bailiff called us to order, and Judge Patricia Chen entered. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd heard every excuse and believed none of them. I recognized the type, judges who cared about law, not theater. Leonard had chosen the venue well. Morrison stood first, launching into his opening statement. Your Honor, this case is about a father turning his back on his own daughter. My clients have lived in that home for years, believing it was their home too, part of their family arrangement. To suddenly face eviction, without warning or justification, Judge Chen interrupted. Mr. Morrison, was there a written lease or rental agreement? Morrison hesitated. No, Your Honor, but there was an understanding, a verbal. Continue, but please focus on legal facts. Morrison tried. He painted a picture of family bonds and unspoken agreements, contributions to the household that couldn't be measured in dollars, the emotional devastation of being cast out. It was a performance designed for sympathy. In another court, with another judge, it might have worked. Not here. Leonard stood when his turn came. Your Honor, the facts are straightforward. Mr. Peterson is the sole owner of the property in question. He handed the property deed to the bailiff, who passed it to Judge Chen. He properly served a 30-day eviction notice, as required by Texas law. His reasons are his own. Property owners in Texas have that right. Judge Chen studied the deed. And what was the living arrangement? The defendants lived rent-free for 5 years. Leonard produced the bank statements, a thick stack that made an audible thump when he set them down. These document that Mr. Peterson spent over $340,000 supporting them while they contributed nothing. Morrison tried to object. Leonard calmly presented neighbor testimony, written statements from Mrs. Patricia Williams, and 2 others describing how Laura and Woodrow treated the house as their own, made decisions without consulting me, spoke to me disrespectfully in my own driveway. Then Leonard played the video. I'd had security cameras installed years ago after a break-in on our street. They captured audio and video from the dining room and living room. I'd almost forgotten about them until I was gathering evidence. The footage from Thanksgiving was crystal clear. The courtroom screens showed Rebecca's attacks, her comments about Margaret, her pathetic man insult, showed Laura's escalation, her ultimatum, her ordering me to apologize or get out. The audio picked up every word, every tone, every moment of disrespect in my own home. I watched Judge Chen's face instead of the screen. Her expression hardened with each passing minute. When the video ended, she looked at Laura with something close to contempt. Ms. Peterson Gray, I'd like you to explain what I just watched. Laura stood, her legs visibly shaking. It was a difficult day. Tensions were high. I was defending my mother-in-law. You gave your father an ultimatum in his own home. Is that correct? Yes, but did you apologize afterward or attempt to repair the relationship? Laura's voice dropped to almost nothing. No, I thought he would. Thank you. You may sit. Judge Chen turned to Woodrow. Mr. Gray, do you have any documentation showing you paid rent, utilities, or contributed financially to this household? No, Your Honor, but we helped with maintenance and do you have receipts for these maintenance costs, proof of expenditures? No, ma'am. So you have no financial documentation of any contribution? Woodrow's voice was barely audible. No, Your Honor. The judge called a 15-minute recess. Leonard and I waited in silence. He reviewed his notes calmly. I sat perfectly still, hands folded on the table. Across the aisle, Laura cried on Morrison's shoulder. Woodrow paced. In the gallery, Rebecca stood abruptly and walked out. Couldn't bear to hear what was coming. When Judge Chen returned, her expression was decided. I've reviewed all evidence and testimony. The law in Texas is clear. Property owners have the right to determine who resides on their property. Mr. Peterson properly served eviction notice, giving defendants 30 days as required. The defendants have presented no evidence of a lease, rental agreement, or documented oral contract. She paused, looked directly at Laura and Woodrow. Furthermore, the evidence shows Mr. Peterson has been extraordinarily generous, supporting 3 adults financially for 5 years without compensation or appreciation. Laura's sob echoed before the judge even finished. Therefore, I rule in favor of the plaintiff. Defendants must vacate the property at the Bel Air address no later than March 1st. If they fail to comply, the Sheriff's Department is authorized to execute forced removal. Additionally, defendants will pay plaintiff's legal fees and court costs. The gavel fell. Laura's cry turned into full weeping. Woodrow put his head in his hands. Morrison gathered his papers with the defeated efficiency of a lawyer who knew he'd lost before he started. Leonard leaned close. That went exactly as expected. Yes, they'll be out by March 1st. If not, we'll have the sheriff there on the 2nd. They'll be out. They understand now. Leonard glanced at the gallery where Rebecca had been sitting. She left quickly, looked terrified. I stood, gathered my folder. She should be. Because this, the eviction, the court victory, the public humiliation, this was just the opening move. Rebecca knew it. That's why she'd fled. She understood that a man who would take his own daughter to court wouldn't hesitate to destroy a woman who'd built her life on fraud. The real reckoning was still coming. 3 days after the court ruling, I sent Rebecca a text message. Just an address and a time, a coffee shop called Meridian Grounds on the west side of Houston, far from Bel Air, where no one would recognize us. I didn't ask if she'd come. I knew she would. People with secrets always show up when you hint you know what they're hiding. I arrived 15 minutes early, chose a corner booth with a view of the entrance, and ordered black coffee I didn't intend to drink. When Rebecca walked in, she looked like she'd aged 5 years in 3 days. She spotted me, hesitated, then walked over with her purse clutched against her chest like armor, sat down stiffly across from me without ordering anything. Her hands were shaking. She tried to hide it by clasping them together on the table. "Why did you want to meet?" Her voice was defensive, brittle. "We're moving out. Isn't that enough?" "No. What more do you want from us?" I opened the manila folder that sat between us on the table, removed the first photograph with deliberate slowness, rotated it so it faced her, slid it across with 2 fingers. Roger Thornton, age 61, standing outside an auto parts store in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Very much alive. The timestamp read 4 weeks ago. The color drained from Rebecca's face in seconds. "This could be anyone," she said, but her voice had lost its certainty. "Photos can be manipulated." I slid across another photo. Roger loading groceries into a Toyota. Then another. Roger walking a golden retriever. Then another. Each image a nail in a coffin she'd been building for 15 years. That's Roger, shopping at a grocery store in Albuquerque last Thursday. There are 36 more photos, different days, different locations, all time-stamped. I pulled out bank documents next, the insurance payout from 2009, $200,000 deposited into her account 6 months after Roger's supposed death. "I was a sheriff for 35 years. I know how to investigate fraud." Her hands went to her mouth. "Where did you get these?" "That's not the question you should be asking." She stared at the photographs, at Roger's living face, and something inside her began to crumble. I watched it happen, the same way I'd watched hundreds of suspects realize they were caught, that the lies were over, that consequences were coming. "You don't understand." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Roger abandoned us, left me with a child and nothing. I had to survive somehow. So you faked his death and stole $200,000 from an insurance company. It wasn't stealing. He owed us that money. He destroyed our lives. That's called insurance fraud. It's a felony. I had no choice." I leaned forward slightly. "You had choices. You chose crime." She tried anger next. "If you expose this, Woodrow will be destroyed. He'll know his father abandoned him, that I lied for 15 years. Is that what you want? To hurt him? Woodrow deserves to know the truth about his family, just like I deserved honesty from mine. Laura will never forgive you for this. Laura made her choice at Thanksgiving. I pulled out a single sheet of typed paper, my ultimatum, numbered and clear, placed it on top of the evidence pile. This is about justice, not forgiveness. She picked up the paper with trembling hands, read it once, then again, as if the words might change. You have 48 hours, I said. Tell Woodrow everything, show him these photos, explain what you did, face the consequences, transfer $50,000 to this account. I tapped the bank routing information at the bottom of the page. And after March 1st, I never want to see you again. 50,000? I don't have that kind of money. You collected 200,000 in fraudulent insurance money 15 years ago. You have it, or sell something. That's your problem. And if I refuse, then I contact Metropolitan Life Insurance and the New Mexico Attorney General's office. You'll face criminal prosecution. Insurance fraud carries 2 to 10 years in prison, depending on the amount and circumstances. 200,000 puts you solidly in the upper range. She set the paper down carefully, as if it might explode. You'd really send me to prison? Without hesitation. The fight went out of her then. I watched her shoulders slump, her face collapse. She was seeing her future clearly now. No more comfortable existence in my house. No more controlling her son through guilt and manipulation. No more living on stolen money while pretending to be a respectable widow. What if I tell Woodrow and he hates me forever? That's not my problem. You earned whatever happens. How can you be so cold? I stood slowly, leaving the folder on the table. You called me pathetic at my own table. You lived in my house rent-free while treating me like garbage. You built your entire life on lies. I pulled $5 from my wallet, dropped it on the table for the coffee I hadn't touched. This isn't cold. This is consequences. Please, she whispered. There has to be another way. I checked my watch. 47 hours and 53 minutes. Don't be late. I buttoned my jacket and walked toward the exit. Didn't look back. Behind me, Rebecca sat alone in that corner booth, surrounded by evidence of her crimes, facing an impossible choice that wasn't really a choice at all. The countdown had begun. The bank transfer notification came at 11:30 p.m. on the second night. $50,000 deposited from an account in Rebecca's name. I picked up my phone from the nightstand, read the banking app notification, set it back down. No satisfaction, just confirmation. She'd complied with the first condition. I went to sleep. The second condition, telling Woodrow the truth, happened the next morning. I didn't witness it, but Laura called me at 7 a.m. I was already awake, drinking coffee at my kitchen table, when her name lit up my phone screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering. What did you do? Her voice came through raw with shock and fury. Rebecca is destroyed. Woodrow won't even look at her. What kind of monster are you? I said nothing, just held the phone, listening. She told him about his father. She had to show him those pictures. He's completely broken. Are you happy now? I didn't create those lies. I just exposed them. You forced her to destroy her own son. That's evil. She destroyed him 15 years ago when she lied. I just made him aware of it. We're your family. How can you? I ended the call, silenced the phone, returned to my coffee. By noon, I'd printed and mailed copies of Rebecca's insurance fraud documents to Metropolitan Life Insurance Company's Fraud Investigation Department. They'd handle the civil lawsuit, recover their money, plus interest and penalties. The criminal prosecution could come later, or not at all. That wasn't my concern anymore. March 1st arrived gray and cold. I drove to the Bel Air house at 9 a.m. A Harris County Sheriff's deputy was already there, standing beside his patrol car in the driveway. He nodded when he saw me approach. Sheriff Peterson, thought that was you. Heard you retired. 5 years ago. I stopped beside him, both of us facing the house. You're here for the eviction supervision? Yes, sir. Should be straightforward. They've been packing since yesterday. Good. I appreciate you being here. Part of the job. He glanced at the house where movement was visible through the windows. Though I'll admit, family evictions are never easy. No, they're not. A moving truck sat in the driveway, its back doors open. As I watched, Woodrow emerged carrying a box, his movements mechanical, face blank. He loaded it without looking at anyone, then disappeared back inside. Rebecca followed minutes later, struggling with a box that looked too heavy for her. She set it down halfway to the truck, adjusted her grip, picked it up again. Woodrow walked past her without offering to help. I stayed on the front lawn, arms crossed, witnessing the dismantling of their occupation. Laura appeared in the doorway with wrapped dishes, tears streaming down her face. She saw me standing there, and her expression twisted with hatred. But she said nothing, just turned and went back inside. The exodus took 3 hours. Box after box, piece after piece, they emptied the house of their presence. The deputy checked his watch periodically, made notes on his clipboard, professional, neutral, ensuring the law's requirements were met. When the last box was loaded, Rebecca walked slowly across the lawn toward me, stopped 5 feet away, maintaining distance. Her posture was defeated, shoulders slumped, head down. "I transferred the money." Her voice was barely audible. "You got it?" "Yes." "Are you satisfied now? You've destroyed everything." "You destroyed everything. I just stopped being your victim. Woodrow will never recover from this. He'll recover from the truth. He wouldn't have recovered from a lifetime of lies." Her voice broke. "What happens now?" "You leave. You never contact me again. If I see you, the prosecutor gets everything." She nodded numbly, turned, and walked back to the moving truck, climbed into the back seat beside stacked boxes. Laura was already in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead. Woodrow started the engine. As the truck pulled away, Laura rolled down her window. "I hope you can live with what you've done." "I can," I called back. "Can you? We were your family. You stopped being my family when you told me to leave my own house." The truck turned the corner and disappeared. I watched until even the sound of the engine faded. Then I turned to the deputy. "All clear," he said. "They're officially vacated. Property is yours again." "Thank you." He drove away, and I stood alone in front of my house. My house. Completely undeniably mine. Inside, the silence was different from the silence of my apartment. This was the silence of reclamation, of a space emptied and waiting to be filled with something better. I walked through each room, assessing. The carpet would need replacing, stained and worn from years of careless use. The walls needed fresh paint. Small repairs everywhere, evidence of people who treated what wasn't theirs without respect. But it was salvageable, all of it. I sat down at the dining room table, the same table where this began at Thanksgiving, pulled out a large manila envelope, addressed and stamped. Inside, complete copies of Rebecca's insurance fraud documentation, photographs, bank statements, witness testimony, Ashley's full investigation report, Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, Fraud Investigation Unit. I sealed it carefully, walked to the mailbox on the corner, and dropped it in. The metallic clang of the mailbox closing echoed down the empty street. The insurance company would pursue their civil case. Rebecca would face financial ruin. They'd sue for the full amount plus 15 years of interest, penalties, legal fees. She'd probably declare bankruptcy, lose whatever savings she had left after paying me, spend years digging out of debt. That wasn't my doing. That was consequence, the natural result of building a life on fraud. I walked back to my house slowly, feeling the weight of the past 4 months lifting with each step. Not happiness exactly, not triumph, just the quiet satisfaction of justice properly served, of accounts balanced, of a man who refused to remain a victim. The house needed work. So did I. But we'd both recover, and we'd do it honestly, without lies, without theft, without pretending to be something we weren't. Starting now. Metropolitan Life Insurance moved faster than I'd expected. 2 weeks after I mailed them the evidence, their legal department filed a civil lawsuit against Rebecca Thornton in federal court. I received a courtesy notification as the person who'd provided the documentation. They wanted me available as a potential witness. The lawsuit demanded full restitution of the fraudulent $200,000, plus 15 years of compounded interest, penalties, and legal fees. The total, $380,000. Rebecca didn't have that kind of money, not anymore. Leonard called to update me. "Thought you'd want to know. Metropolitan Life filed their lawsuit. $380,000. When? Last week. Rebecca's already talking bankruptcy with her attorney. That was predictable. They'll pursue it regardless. Insurance companies don't let fraud slide." I thanked him and hung up. Later, I checked the federal bankruptcy filing online, public record, easily searchable. There it was. Rebecca Lynn Thornton, Chapter 7 Bankruptcy Petition. I read through it clinically, noting the list of debts, the near-zero assets, the complete financial collapse. Then I closed the browser and went about my day. April came. May. Leonard occasionally mentioned news that filtered through courthouse connections. Rebecca had taken a job at a big box store, minimum wage, just to cover rent on a studio apartment. Woodrow had tried to work but kept breaking down, missing shifts, unable to focus. By May, he was effectively unemployable. Their marriage, Leonard heard, was fracturing under the pressure of poverty and blame. Laura's letter arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in May. I recognized her handwriting immediately, the same distinctive loops and slants she'd had since high school. I carried it inside my apartment, set it on the kitchen table, made coffee. Only then did I sit down and open it, pages long. It started with apologies. Dad, I know I hurt you. I know what I said at Thanksgiving was unforgivable. Moved to excuses. I was caught between you and Mom. I didn't know what to do. Then to their current situation, described in careful detail. We're living in a 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood where I'm afraid to walk at night. Woodrow can't work. I can't find a job despite trying everywhere. We're barely surviving. The final paragraph avoided direct requests, but made the ask clear. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what you must have felt. She signed it, your daughter Laura, and included a photograph, her as a 7-year-old, sitting on my shoulders at some park, both of us laughing. A calculated inclusion, an appeal to nostalgia, to the past when things were simple. I studied that photo for a long time, remembered that day, who I was then, who she was. But that person was gone. Both of those people were. I read the letter twice, looking for genuine understanding, for real accountability. Found apologies framed around her suffering, not her choices. I'm sorry you felt hurt, instead of, I'm sorry I hurt you. The difference mattered. She still didn't understand. Actions had consequences. Comfort built on someone else's sacrifice wasn't earned. I'd stopped being their buffer between reality and themselves. Now reality had arrived, harsh and unforgiving. But that wasn't my fault. That was justice. Should I feel satisfaction? I didn't. Should I feel guilt? I didn't either. What I felt was closure. They were living the natural consequences of their decisions. I hadn't manufactured their suffering. I'd simply stopped preventing it. For 5 years, I'd been a safety net. Now the net was gone, and gravity had done its work. I could send money, $5,000, $10,000. It wouldn't hurt me financially. But it would teach them nothing. It would reset the pattern. Laura makes demands, I comply, nothing changes. The cycle needed to stay broken. I folded the letter with the same care I'd give any important document, placed it in a manila folder with all the other paperwork from this chapter, eviction notices, court documents, evidence files, the photo too, face down, slid the folder into my filing cabinet drawer. The metallic click was final. That evening I sat on my apartment balcony with a book I'd been reading. History, nothing related to any of this. Read for an hour as the sun set, painting the sky orange and pink. My coffee cooled beside me, untouched. My mind was quiet, peaceful. This chapter was closing, and I was ready for what came next. Justice had run its course. I'd played my part. Now it was time to live again. By early summer, I'd made my decision about the Bel Air house. I hadn't lived there since Thanksgiving. Couldn't bring myself to return after the eviction, even though it was mine again. Too many ghosts. The dining room where Rebecca attacked my memories. The guest rooms where they had lived rent-free for years. Even the good memories felt tainted now. So I listed it for sale in June. It's a beautiful house, the agent said. Are you sure you want to sell? The market's good, but you could wait. I'm sure. List it this week. Any particular reason for selling? There are. That's why I'm selling. A family with 3 kids bought it within 2 weeks for $680,000. I signed the papers at the title company without sentiment. Didn't attend the final walkthrough. Let the agent handle everything. When I signed the last page, transferring ownership, my pen didn't hesitate. July came. I drove out to see a property my realtor had mentioned. A small ranch about 45 minutes outside Houston. 12 acres with a modest house, a barn, open land. I parked at the end of a long dirt driveway and just stood there, looking. It was quiet. No neighbors visible, just space and trees and possibility. I walked the property line, checking fences, assessing the barn, saw a porch where I could sit mornings with coffee, pulled out my phone. Make an offer? The ranch cost significantly less than the Bel Air house sold for, leaving me financially secure. I moved in slowly over several weeks, carrying boxes myself, arranging furniture, hanging pictures, taking time to make each decision. The house transformed from empty to lived in, becoming mine in ways the Bel Air house never really had been after Margaret died. The letter arrived mid-July, forwarded from my apartment. Different attorney, not Leonard. I read it standing in my ranch kitchen, coffee in hand. It revealed something I hadn't known. Laura and Woodrow had a 6-year-old son named Marcus. He'd been living with Woodrow's aunt in San Antonio throughout everything. They'd kept him away from the Bel Air situation, probably smart given how toxic it became. Now, with the family in crisis, the boy was showing signs of trauma from the instability. The attorney requested financial help for child therapy, $5,000 for initial sessions. A grandson I'd never met, never even knew existed. I set down my coffee and read that section twice, sat at my kitchen table with the letter in front of me, thinking. The boy was innocent, 6 years old. He hadn't chosen his parents, hadn't participated in any of this, didn't deserve to suffer for their mistakes. This was different from refusing Laura's veiled request. This was a child. I called Leonard. I need to arrange an anonymous payment, $5,000, directly to a therapist, not to the family. Can you set it up so it can't be traced back to me? You're sure about this, after everything they put you through? The child didn't put me through anything. He's 6 years old. You're a better man than most. I'm just being fair. Justice isn't about punishing the innocent. We worked out the details. Payment routed through an account with no identifying information. Goes directly to the therapist. If Laura or Woodrow somehow discover the donor's identity and contact me, the funding stops immediately. This wasn't reconciliation. This was mercy for someone who deserved it. When Leonard confirmed the payment was sent, something shifted inside me, a final loosening of the anger I'd carried since Thanksgiving. August settled in, hot and slow. I bought 2 horses, not because I needed them, but because I wanted them. Spent my days repairing fence lines, painting the barn, working with my hands. The physical labor felt good, purposeful. One evening in late August, I sat in a rocking chair on my porch, had a glass of iced tea, nothing stronger, watched the sun drop toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. My horses grazed in the field. The air smelled like grass and earth and summer. I rocked slowly, my mind quiet for the first time in a year. I thought about them sometimes, Laura struggling, Woodrow broken, Rebecca crushed. I didn't wish them well, but I didn't wish them harm either. I simply didn't wish. They were part of a closed chapter, and I had moved on to a new one. The ranch was mine. The land was mine. The future was mine. For the first time since Margaret died, I felt like I was living again, not just existing. Justice had been served, not through cruelty, but through accountability. Consequences had found those who earned them. Mercy had reached an innocent child who needed it. Now came the part I'd almost forgotten existed, living. The sun touched the horizon, and the world turned gold. I took a breath of clean air and let it out slowly. Felt the tension of the past year release with it. This was peace, real peace, not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice properly balanced with mercy. I rocked in my chair and watched the day end, knowing tomorrow would begin something new. And I was ready. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.